So today, I'm not going to take a lot of your time. I'm going to get straight away into what you have come here for, a nice webinar, a conversation with Mr. Sanjeev Bikhchandani. As you can see, he's waiting to interact with all of you. Mr. Bikhchandani is a Padma Shri awardee and, one of the greatest entrepreneurs of our time in the country. Mr. Bikhchandani is not just known for his innovation, but also for his philanthropic efforts. So today I'd like to share with all of you what would make a great management career. And if any of you are interested in entrepreneurship, how could you go about it? What is it that makes him a great entrepreneur? And all those in school, how can you take your journey from school into college and beyond that? So he will be in conversation with one of the greatest educators of our time, Mr. Carlyle McFarlane. Mr. McFarlane is currently the principal of Lamaknia College at Lucknow, which I think should be the oldest college. Mr. McFarlane can correct me if I'm wrong. And the most prestigious schools in Lucknow and in the country today. Mr. McFarlane himself has been into teaching roles also before he became principal. So over to Mr. McFarlane and Mr. Bikhchandani.
Thank you, Surabhi, so much. And welcome to Mr. Sanjeev Bikhchandani, whose acquaintance I'm making after at least 4 or 5 years once again. We were very fortunate to have him as a guest in our college, where students from about class 6 upwards were able to quiz him and ask him the kind of questions that I expect you will be asking him today, no doubt, on this virtual system. But welcome to you, sir. And let me first talk to the young people who are over here as to what our expectations are for this afternoon's brief program.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me here, Surabhi, and thank you, sir, for having a chat with me.
Mr. Bikhchandani, you see, we'll pull out all the bells and whistles for him to welcome him, because his name is synonymous with Naukri.com. And each one of you at some time or the other in the next few years to come will definitely be using this particular platform to be able to get the best kind of placement that you are qualified for. So isn't it wonderful to be able to talk to him about his experiences, what the expectations are, and how this can be matched, not just by Naukri.com, but by each of you doing your own thing in the same way that Mr. Bikhchandani has done as well. As the principal of the school, I have observed that he has been to the absolute gilt-edged blue chip kind of system of education. He studied with the Irish Christian Brothers in St. Columba's School in New Delhi. He went on to St. Stephen's, arguably one of the finest colleges in the country, and then went on to the IIM at Ahmedabad, which unarguably is the best management institute in the country, as well as among the best in the world. But then he did his own thing. And many of you would like to do your own thing as well. Is it practical? Is it possible? Is it plausible? Here is somebody whom you will speak with and who will tell us what the challenges are, what the faults could be, and to bring a degree of reality into what otherwise might be just ambitious imagination. So today's program will talk about a few things, not necessarily in the sequence that I am putting it to you just now, but we hope to be able to cover some of these areas. How does one succeed as an entrepreneur in the corporate sector? What is this thing called entrepreneurship? What are the skills that are needed to survive? what is the current scope of employability through these and the pay packages that go along with it, considering that InfoEdge, Naukri, Zomato all hire from here too. How does one really climb the corporate ladder? You young people have not yet taken the first step onto that ladder. How are placements to be seen and projected in the corporate sector? And does studying at the IIMs or other institutes which are as well known really make this huge difference? And to start with that, I call on Mr. Bikhchandani to tell us a little bit about that very, very significant moment when he decided not to sell Horlicks as a brand and to move into something that he himself wanted to do and had devised and had planned for. What was it that promoted and provoked him to be able to take that step? Our young people over here would like to know how you were able to give up security, safety, a good pay package to be able to do something which you were not sure whether it would work or not. Mr. Bikhchandani.
Well, I quit my job in 1990 to become an entrepreneur. And we launched Naukri only in 1997. So for the first 7 years of breaking out on my own, I did maybe a bunch of 15 or 20 different small things in order to sort of somehow survive. I had no big idea. I had no desire to build a big company. It's just that I did not want to be an executive in a large corporation. And so I said, I prefer the independence. I prefer the ability to create. And I moved out. And when we launched Naukri in 1997, after 7 years of drift, it was seemingly one more small idea. There were only 14,000 internet accounts in the country. So a lot of things happened because, I happened to be there and kept trying. But to come to your question, look, quitting a job. So I'm from a middle-class family. My father was a doctor in the government. My mother was a homemaker. There wasn't any great wealth in the family. And all along, middle-class children in India are brought up by their parents and told continuously, listen, you have to study, because if you have nothing to inherit, no great wealth. So if you don't study, you won't get ahead in life. You won't get into a good college, a good career, a good postgrad, a good job, right? So we were not brought up to be entrepreneurs. We were brought up to study hard. We were brought up to get into good colleges and then eventually get a good job and you'll be comfortable either in the government or in the private sector or in medicine or whatever. But somehow, ever since I was 12 or 13 years old, I got into my head that maybe it's a good idea to be, at some point in time, starting my own company. Now, when you're 12 or 13, look, as a young boy, look, everyone daydreams, right? I'm sure all of us still daydream. Okay, I do, right? So I was a daydreamer, as was everybody else. And, when I was maybe 10 years old, I went to the cinema with my friends and I saw a picture starring Rajesh Khanna called Hathi Mere Sathi, right? And I came back completely starry-eyed. Now, in those days, look, there were no televisions in people's homes. TV was meant to be evil anyway because it distracted you, as was cinema. So you got to see a movie once every 3 or 4 months only, right? You either studied or you played sports. And sports were for, were for character building, and studies was the main thing, right? And the school was tough on discipline, right? You used to get caned, all boys school. They believed in corporal punishment, which is now, I believe, illegal in India. But you used to get caned if you didn't do your homework and you stepped out of line. And so we were kept pretty much in line, right? Somewhere I decided that, listen, when I was 10 years old, I wanted to be Rajesh Khanna. I came back from that movie completely starry-eyed. When I was 11 years old, I saw Sunil Gavaskar playing Test cricket live telecast. It was one of the earliest telecasts of Test cricket in India on a black and white TV at my uncle's house. And I said, hey, I want to be Sunil Gavaskar. Now, schoolboy dreams, mostly unrealistic. But eventually when realism crept in, when I was 12 years old, I said, maybe at some point in time, I should start my own company. Now, the motivator was independence. I think somewhere in my head always had a thing, I want to be my own boss. I want to be independent. I want to create. Maybe I had a bit of a problem with authority, right? In my own quiet way, I would never protest it, but in my head it was, I'll be my own person. Right now, this was a fuzzy goal and a dream, but this dream kept coming back. So this is a daydream that stayed. Right? When I was in class 11 or 12, I remember articulating it for the first time. So, we went class 11 or 12, and the boy who sat next to me in school, and I'm still in touch with him, he asked me, so what do you want to do after school? He told me, I want to be a doctor and I want to go to AIMS. And he was the school topper or the class topper. And he actually did go to AIMS, right? Which is very hard to get into, even then. Right? And he asked me, what do you want to do? I said, look, I don't know what I want to do in college, but I know eventually I want to be an entrepreneur. In those days, we didn't use the word entrepreneur. That's become more fashionable now. I said, eventually I want to start my own business. And somehow he said, I think you'll get there. Look, I can see it in you that you are determined, you will get there. This is class 11 or 12. And that goal was sort of, I articulated for the first time and it stayed with me. And right through college, that was my goal, right through my working, I worked for 5 years before becoming an entrepreneur. Right through my working life, that was my goal. Right through my MBA program, that was my goal, when I was at IIM. Right? Now, it's a goal. It's a fuzzy goal. It's a distant goal. It's, sometime I will do it. What business, when, how, I do not know. But the truth is, if you're from a middle-class family and you're in a salaried job in a multinational, which is a well-reputed company, handling good brands, you're being paid well, it was a very difficult thing for me to actually say, I will resign tomorrow and go and resign. Right? And I agonized over it for several months. But in my last job, it was increasingly clear to me that, look, I cannot spend the next 25 years of my life or 30 years of my life. It's now 31 years since I quit my job, doing what I'm currently doing. My future was predictable. I knew that if I worked when I was working and I did well for the next 3 to 5 years, I'd be in that cabin. If I worked for the next 10 years well, I'd be in that cabin. And in maybe 15, 20 years, I might be head of marketing either here or somewhere else. Right? And I used to ask myself a question. I was 25 or 26 then. And I said, look, 30, 35 years from now, when I retire and I look back on my life and my career, and I'll ask myself a question, what would I have achieved? What have I achieved? What have I done? And I wasn't very happy with the kind of answers I was coming up with to myself. It was a kind of existentialist crisis. What is my purpose? Why am I here? What do I want to do with the rest of my life? Right? And I wasn't really happy with the kind of answers I was coming out with. And that old dream, that old goal kept coming back. And I said, maybe the time is now. And I eventually mustered up the courage and decided to take the plunge. Of course, I was spurred on by the fact that, look, in 1989-90, pre-91, pre-liberalization, the Indian corporate sector was fairly sleepy, and therefore hierarchies were oppressive, empowerment was low, and things got done very slowly. So it's not as if I was very excited about my job. In fact, I was not very happy with my job either. I said, I don't want to do this. So it all added up, and eventually one fine day I quit. Now, when I quit, I had no big idea. A couple of small ideas. I decided to pursue them along with a friend, and which is what we did. But gradually over time, after 7 years, we launched Naukri.
Yeah, it's time for me to just interject over there and to put those thoughts together for the many young people who are sharing in this conversation as well. What we have seen seems to be the evolution of an idea. Definitely, we've had very famous mentors, okay, Rajesh Khanna in class 5, the Indian cricket team in class 6, okay, wanting to be independent in class 7, moving up to class 12 and doing the traditional thing. But somewhere there has been evolution, as I'm sure it has been in the young people who are listening to our conversation here as well. My question to you in this regard, Mr. Bikhchandani, do you think you possessed a rebel gene? Do all entrepreneurs possess a rebel gene? Or was this really a calculated move? Because from what you have said and what I have understood, it doesn't seem to have been planned. So is it a certain kind of personality type, what I described as having a rebel gene, that promotes stuff like this?
Well, I guess it's different for different entrepreneurs. Not everybody is the same. So it's kind of hard to generalize. In my case, look, in hindsight, I probably did possess a rebel gene. I also perhaps did not possess a gene where I would confront people and get aggressive. So although I was a rebel, I was mostly a rebel in my head and not so much in my actions where I had to confront people. But I have taken a few sort of unusual decisions, right? In the sense that, look, I went to a school where academics was the main goal, and it's an all-boys school, and you weren't a real man if you didn't get into IIT, right? So we all duly prepared, and a large number would go to IIT from St. Columbus in those days. And my brother had gone to IIT. It was expect my teachers, my parents, all my peers that we would all prepare and go to IIT. And I prepared for that exam, and as luck would have it, I qualified. But when I went for the medical sort of counseling, in the counseling as a medical test, I discovered that I was partially colorblind. And the person across the table told me, "Son, you can join. It's okay. A few careers and departments will be close to you, but you can join." Now, when I was graduating from school, when I was in class 11, the country was switching over from class 11 to class 12. And different states were switching over in different years over a 3-year window. So the IIT folks had decided that you can write the exam after class 11 without having finished high school, which means if you're in a state which is also a class 12, but you can still join IIT after class 11. You don't have to officially get a board exam certificate. You can join IIT. So I had gotten after class 11, and next year I had to go to class 12. So I for the first time in my life, I sat and thought. I was, presented with a dilemma, right? And it was my first time I faced a kind of existentialist crisis. And I sat and thought hard for 2 or 3 weeks. And I said that, look, if I go to IIT now and something happens, I have to drop out for any reason, I won't even be a class 12 pass. On the other hand, if I chuck up this IIT admission and complete class 12, I will be a class 12 pass. And that was the last year you could write the IIT exam after class 11. Because by then, everybody had shifted to class 12. So, and IIT was becoming a 4-year program from a 5-year program in that year. So I said, I won't lose a year. I can write the exam again. All the good guys from my batch have already got in. But my junior batch can't write it. So I should be able to get in again, get a better rank, and have a class 12 certificate, and not lose a year. So using that reasoning, I chucked up the admission, and I continued in class 12. I wrote the exam again. I got in again, but this time I also got into St. Stephen's College for economics. And during that 1 year in class 12, I kept asking myself a question, a lot of soul searching, why do I want to be an engineer? And I concluded I didn't want to be an engineer. I just wanted to be an IITian. I was following the herd. I wanted the brand. I wanted the label. I didn't know what engineers actually did, right? I'm not sure I was passionate about it. I was good at physics, chemistry, and maths, and therefore I could clear that exam. but what do I really want to do? Right? And then I got into St. Stephen's, and I had taken science and biology in school, right? So I knew nothing about economics. So I certainly wasn't passionate about the subject. And when you are finishing class 12, many people are reasonably clueless. You take decisions based on what our parents say, what our friends are saying, what's the fashionable thing to do, and finally on what marks do we get and therefore what admissions we get, right? But people are by and large under-researched and reasonably clueless. There is this huge middle-class quest for financial security. And therefore, we have this entrance exam mindset that, we are told and we come to believe that, son, if you clear this exam, you're set for life. Now, the exam could be the IIT entrance or the engineering entrance. It could be the medical entrance. It could later on be the MBA entrance. It could be the IAS. It could be the CA exam. But we have this mindset for entrance exams as a society. Certainly middle class India does, right? And of course, I didn't think of it in these terms. I was just thinking what's best for me. I now in hindsight realize this is what I was going through, right? And I figured that, listen, why should I spend 4 years doing something I'm not passionate about when I can spend 3 years doing something I'm not passionate about, and both are equally good brands? So I drifted into college, like many, many young people drift into what the next course is. And that's natural and that's normal. I mean, it's a coming of age experience. And at 17, 18, you don't really know, right? And life happens to you after that. And that's what happened to me. So so whether it's a rebel streak or whether that is when you're pushed into a corner, was I willing to think and perhaps swim against the tide and do the unconventional thing? So maybe partly rebel, maybe partly willing to swim against the tide. That's what happened in my case. But about every other entrepreneur, I do not know.
Thank you, sir. I'm sure this has been insightful for young people who are listening to this as well. From what I can understand, even after taking up management, you did go the traditional way by joining the corporate sector, taking up jobs which were well-paying, etc., as many young people would also aspire to do. And then, after much soul-searching, as you said, it took you several months, you decided that you would resign. What is the safety net, or what was the safety net that you had at that time to be able to take a decision like this? And can young people draw inspiration from what you did in your own special way?
Well, I think my biggest safety net was my qualification. I knew that if things don't work out, I will still get a job. I was a postgraduate in management from IIM Ahmedabad. So in those days, a failed entrepreneur was not valued the way of entrepreneur experience is valued today. I knew that if I had to come back to the corporate sector, I'll probably lose out. I will no longer be on a fast track. I will no longer be able to rise to the top of an organization, but I will not starve. So that was safety net number one. Safety net number two was I began to teach as visiting faculty at management schools around Delhi on weekends, and therefore was able to earn enough money to survive. Safety net number three was my family. We were living in my parents' house. There was no rent to be paid. The kitchen was running. And so I was not going to starve. Fourth was my wife, a classmate from IIM Ahmedabad, she was working. So there was some income coming. So I think those were the safety nets. But really, more than a financial risk, the risk an entrepreneur takes is a social risk. Right? Where, most of my classmates from IIM Ahmedabad were not entrepreneurs. They were in large corporations and multinationals. They were earning well. Of course, this is pre-mobile phone days, pre-internet days. So, as time went by, you weren't communicating so often and you weren't meeting so often, except people, in the same city. But, the truth was that if you're not earning the same amount of money, you cannot meet socially and in the same settings. You could not go to a restaurant and pick up your share of the bill. I was not making that kind of money. You could not go to the same parties. You could not take vacations together, right? And so in general, after 10 years of being an entrepreneur and without having anything much to show for those 10 years, in the year 2000, I must have been the worst off person in my class at IIM Ahmedabad, right? And I know now people have told me that, listen, we used to discuss, my batchmates would discuss each other when I was not present and said, what a waste of a career. He's a good guy. What's he done to his life? Right? So the bigger risk that an entrepreneur takes is social. You can live with the consequences of the financial risk you take. Because you've done with, knowing fully well that, listen, I'm taking this financial risk. What you don't anticipate is the social risk.
That's just the point which I was hoping would come out from this. The social risk which is involved. And I hope the young people were also listening to what was said a moment ago by Mr. Bikhchandani, when he said that all of them in school seem to be in love with the idea of an IIT degree without really knowing what it was to be an engineer. And so we're really not being true to themselves and following their own thing. It does require us, I presume, to be able to find out what we are best suited for and then move on towards that. I move now to another section of our conversation with Mr. Bikhchandani, which is to ask him something that he's touched on in his interaction with us. 40 years ago, there was no such word as entrepreneur. Or if it was a very fancy word which you would associate with.
It was almost never used by Indian
types.
Yes.
Right? What makes an entrepreneur today, 40 years after you left school and India changed and the whole systems changed and the corporate movement came into India? Can we advise our young people about what it truly means to be an entrepreneur rather than just one more fancy title for them?
So I think, look, to be an entrepreneur, to move to entrepreneurship, to be successful as an entrepreneur, and success can have various definitions, right? I think the first thing is a huge burning desire to be an entrepreneur. You should not dabble in entrepreneurship. You should not do it because it's fashionable. You should not do it because, it's the next new thing, right? You should do it because you really want to do it, right? Because and be prepared, even in today's day and age, be prepared, even in today's day and age of capital availability, right? Be prepared that, look, for a long, long time, you may be plowing a lonely furrow. You may be hard up for money. There will be ups and downs. There will be months and perhaps years when you can't take a salary. And there may be rejection and failure. And there may be heartbreaks, right? So there has to be a deep burning desire. There has to be a reality check and understanding all the hardships that may come your way. And then you've got to have a good idea, a good team, and execute well. Now, what's a good idea? What I have, looking back in hindsight, last 30 years as being an entrepreneur, I think the best ideas come from solving unsolved problems. They come from deep customer insights. So you've got to produce something, deliver something, offer something, which your prospective customer will want to buy. You can't hard sell it. He has to want to buy it. Therefore, it has to be an unsolved problem, right? So I'll tell you two stories of how I got a customer insight, which I knew would work. When I was in my last job at H&M, I was in marketing, working on the brand Horlicks. The company is now called GlaxoSmithKline after a number of mergers and acquisitions. And when I was working there, the junior marketing team would sit in an open hall. And I used to observe, because open hall, I could see everything. I used to observe that every time the office copy of Business India would come in, everybody would read it from the back. And they would not read the articles, they would just see the ads and pass on the magazine. And that is because, I found that strange behavior, because at the back of the magazine were 35 to 40 pages of appointment ads. Because Business India was the #1 appointment ad medium for professional managers in those days. And then people start discussing, hey, there's a job going here, what do you think? And they will start, and these are people who are happy in their jobs, they're working for a multinational, they will never apply for another job. They're happy. Right? And that's when I figured that jobs are a high interest category of information. People will always look at a job even when they're not looking for a job. Right? The next thing I observed was that because there were 7, 8, 10 people in that company of a certain profile, all highly qualified from the IIMs, this was a good headhunting ground for headhunters, for recruitment companies. And there was no cell phone in those days, so the phones would come on people's desks, on landline, right? And I used to be able to listen to the conversation, at least on this side. And every week, 1 or 2 different recruitment firms or headhunters would call up and try and entice one or the other of my colleagues to quit their job and join a company that they were representing. And I realized that, listen, every time it's a different headhunter with a different job in a different company. And these jobs are not advertised anywhere. Not in Business India, not in Economic Times, not in Times of India, nowhere. So I figured that what appears in print is the tip of the iceberg. There are hundreds of headhunters out there servicing thousands of companies which have tens of thousands of jobs, and these jobs are not advertised. And jobs is a high interest category of information. So customer insight, market insight, 1990, pre-internet, pre-mobile phone, customer insight, I don't know what to do with it. So it became one of those file and forget kind of insights. But when I saw the internet for the first time in 1996, this insight came back to me. And I said, let's just take newspapers from around the country and magazines which carry appointment ads, and let's just rehash these appointment ads and put them on the net and see what happens. An experiment. We did that. And almost instantly traffic began to come because jobs are a high interest category of information. Here are all the jobs in one place, archived for a month from around the country. So if you're sitting in Delhi and the ad appears in Hindu in Madras, now called Chennai, you can still see it here. If you missed last week's newspaper, you can still see it here. So it began to get traffic. And that's when you realize we had a hot button. But this hot button came from a customer insight. Very quickly, the second story. When I met Deepinder Goyal, the founder of Zomato, for the first time, I asked him, Deepinder, where did you get this idea from? Ye idea kahan se aaya? Now, Zomato in those days was called Foodie Bay. It was a site that I used to use. And why I used it was because it had all the menu cards. It was the only site that had all the menu cards of all the restaurants. Right? And that was, to me, really important. I could see the menu, I could plan the dishes, family would then go out, my son and I would discuss, and we would go out to that restaurant where we already seen the dishes and seen the prices. Right? And he told me a very interesting story. So Deepinder had graduated from IIT in 2005, and he had been working in a company called Bain Consulting. Bain Consulting is a large multinational consulting company. He was in the Gurgaon office. And the Bain Consulting office in Gurgaon had about maybe 50, 60 people, mostly young, mostly male, mostly single, many living away from home. As a consequence, they would not bring lunch from home to the office. Often at a cafeteria, which did not serve food, but you could bring your own food and eat it. And consulting, the working hours were long. You invariably had 2 meals in the office, lunch and dinner. So to make life easy for the employees, the admin team had created a file folder, or maybe 2 file folders, of the delivery menu cards of roughly 80 restaurants that would deliver to that location. And Deepinder told me, at 1 o'clock, there'd be a long line to access this file. You had to wait 20 minutes to get to it. Then you got it for 2 minutes where you decided, then you phoned up and the food come in 45 minutes, and then you come back after 1 hour and then get your lunch. A huge pain. So he came in one Saturday and scanned all these menu cards and put them up on his personal page on the office intranet. 2 days later, the IT infra guy came to him and said, "Yaar, what have you done? How come 95% of the internal traffic is going to your personal page?" And he said, that's when the penny dropped. And I got the dazzling insight that, hey, it's not just my problem, it's everybody's problem. And therefore, aggregation of menu cards has got value. Just as I had learned 10 years earlier that aggregation of jobs has got value. And on weekends, Deepinder began to go out and just pick up menu cards from restaurants. And when he had 800, he launched a site. And he got traffic instantly. So once again, a customer insight about an unsolved problem, creation of value. You hit a hot button. Customers come to you, they buy, you don't have to sell. So if you want to succeed as an entrepreneur, apart from burning desire and a great team and everything else, right, you need to be able to focus on customers, get a customer insight, solve an unsolved problem, be an innovator and first mover, and go out there, and your chances of success increase manifold.
Thank you, sir, for those insights. Had you not had the burning desire, had you not had the courage to put in that resignation, like many others, you would still be in the corporate sector and perhaps extremely well paid and doing well also. Do you have any regrets in having worked in the corporate sector for the number of years that you did? And can we advise our young people whether it is indeed useful, practical, and safe to continue working until they are struck by some kind of vision at the appropriate moment?
So I'm a great believer that, look, if you want to be an entrepreneur, just become one. Take a little bit of time if you want, get some work experience if you want, build a safety net if you want, but eventually become one. But don't become one when it's too late. If you become an entrepreneur at 40 or 45, I mean, it's not that people haven't done it. It's not that you can't do it. But look, by then, you will have a lifestyle you want to defend. You'll probably have children who need to go through college. You'll probably have 2-3 cars with EMIs. You probably will have a couple of houses with EMIs, right? And you will become a prisoner of your EMI and your visiting card. It's going to be hard to leave because, see, the first few years in the lives of most entrepreneurs, they are a financial, they are a financial struggle. It's easier and better to take a financial struggle when you're younger and don't have so many other commitments. Number one. Number two is to actually succeed in business is a 10-15 year process. If you start at 40, 45, you won't succeed till you're 50 or till you're 60. That's kind of hard. But you start at 25 or 30, you will still have the youth and the energy and the drive, the ability to sacrifice financially and still make it. So almost no success comes instantly. Most successful entrepreneurs have been through a period of struggle. You look at any great achievement in life by any great person, and I'm not great, I'm not that person. Any great person, I mean truly great. Look at Mahatma Gandhi. Independence of India, great achievement. But it took maybe 50 years of struggle, 55 years of struggle. Right? You take a look at Jawaharlal Nehru, 11 years in jail in the independence movement. You take a look at Jesus Christ. The years he spent in Galilee, the Sea of Galilee, that is what made him. That is what formed his thoughts. Look at Lord Ram. 14 years on Mars. 14 years in the forest. That is what made him. So, if you become an entrepreneur, you will almost always have a period of struggle before you succeed. Almost no great achievement comes without struggle. That is my learning in life. So, be prepared for the struggle. And in that struggle, nothing is safe actually.
We're coming to the end of the period where we ask direct questions of Mr. Bikhchandani. And so the last direct question before we take questions from those who are part of the webinar. The struggle, and the number of examples of great people whom you have given, including a struggle for you, though you don't call yourself great. What are the skills for survival that we can pass on from the experience of others, from your own experience, which we can pass on to young people?
I think the period of struggle will call for extreme resilience, persistence. Therefore, a burning desire to be an entrepreneur and to stay the course is really important. I think they will call for humility, because you don't succeed through struggle unless you're humble. Right? I think they will, and if you're not humble, life will make you humble. Let me put it that way. Right? It's part of the process. Right? Because you will have so many hard knocks that yes, you will become humble. Right? And I think a relentless focus on the consumer, so you know what you're doing and why you're doing it and who you're doing it for. I think it'll call for personal frugality, right? Because you really will not have the money to spend in all likelihood if you're struggling. A skill with people, because you've got to somehow build a team without paying them money or too much money. How will you do that? I think, and hard work, obviously. So work hard, pray hard, and finally, you got to get lucky, right? Because no entrepreneur succeeded without luck. Now, if you're really lucky, you'll get lucky in 5 years. If you're moderately lucky, you'll get lucky in 10 years. If you're quite unlucky, you'll get lucky in 15 years. But then you should have the ability to stay 15 years and you'll still succeed. Right? Which is why I always say that you're a failed entrepreneur only when you quit. Until then, you're just not successful yet. Right? So as an entrepreneur, you have to be an optimist, that you have to believe the future will be better than the past, and therefore keep at it.
Thank you so much, sir. Before we move over to Surabhi for instructions and for collation of some of the questions which may have come up, okay, I can't help but refer to the striking irony that we see in this afternoon session. Here is a man who has left Naukri and set up Naukri.com, all right? Rather than continuing to follow a Naukri, he decided to do his own thing because of burning desire. Maybe this will be reflected in some of the questions that follow. May I ask Dr. Modi Sahai to please collate these, and we can go ahead with this part of the session.
Thank you so much, Mr. McFarlane. Thank you so much, Mr. Bikhchandani. It's always such a pleasure to listen to you. And, every time there's so much learning, even though, we may have heard the story of Zomato, but the way you shared it, it was, again, a learning moment. And I hope all our audience members here also felt the same thing. And some of them seem to be very motivated about taking risks, etc. So since this is a platform where most of the audience comprises students, I think our first question has to be, on, the safety net part. Maybe you could reiterate it again. You did say that you graduated from IIM Ahmedabad, and that was a big safety net. So, is education at all important for, for being who you are, or for being any good entrepreneur, or for whichever idea they may have still in their heads? Because I have several questions on, I have an idea, how can I shape it? And there is someone who says, I want to be an entrepreneur while I'm a student, so can we put it together? I know it will be oversimplistic to sort of give them an idea about safety net, but as you see, these sessions motivate students, and we really do want them to know about all the safety nets, lest we
Okay. So let me first start. A question that you haven't asked me. Let me ask myself that question and then answer it. That, look, did I find my management education beneficial in what I'm doing? My answer is a clear yes. Right. I do believe my 2 years at IIM Ahmedabad helped me a lot. They gave me knowledge. They gave me some skills. They gave me some sort of an attitude. They gave me some context. They gave me some conceptual clarity. Now, all of these somewhere have helped me. They also gave me a certain stamp, a label, a brand, endorsement. And where, look, let's face it, a qualification from a reputed institute does open doors, right? I will look at a La Martiniere College CV slightly differently from that of a school or college that is perhaps not as well regarded. I will at least do a second look. I will at least do a 10-minute interview. So qualifications open doors, and that's the reality in this country. And let's face it. Now, it does not mean that if you don't have that prestigious qualification, you can't succeed. It's just that, look, as a student, I think your primary job is to study. Primary job. Now, you can start a company, you can be great at games, but unless you're pursuing sports as a profession, right, your primary job is to study. So do your primary job well. That is important because that will open doors. Okay? Look, not everybody who tries to get into IIM or the IIT will get in. But can you be the best you can be? May not be better than that guy, but better than you would have otherwise been. Right? I think that's important. You have to give yourself the best possible chance. And therefore, at least study hard. Right? Get engaged and involved in your classes, your textbooks, your exams, whatever else. Right? And yes, extracurriculars are important. Yes, if you want to start a company, you can try and pursue it on the side. You will learn something. Who knows? You might even make some money. But your primary job is to study, and I'll stay with that. It's a slightly conventional answer, but it gives you a real safety net. It gave me a real safety net. It gave me knowledge. It gave me something that I used, and it opened doors for me. And look, let's face it, if you want to be an entrepreneur, a management education is useful. It is actually useful on the job.
So there is one more question.
I think Mr. McFarlane wanted to say something to that.
Sorry.
I was actually just going to prompt Dr. Modi to see what the next question was.
Okay.
I'm so happy listening to what the young people have asked.
Yes.
Yes, so there was one more question. Of course, there are lots of questions on should I be an IS officer or should I be this? Now, I'm sure this webinar is not equipped to handle all these questions at this stage.
So can I ask that question? Look.
Oh, you would? How nice.
So there were 175 people in my class at IIM Ahmedabad. 6 joined the civil services, IAS, IFS, IPS. Okay. In that year, the number second ranked in the IAS was from my class at IIM Ahmedabad. I think the year after I graduated. Okay. Now, the thing about management, see, why Up until very recently, the IIMs gave a diploma, postgraduate diploma in management. They did not give a postgraduate diploma in business administration. What we were told on day one on joining IIMA was, please understand, this is not business management, this is management. The principles of management can be applied across various disciplines: government, not-for-profits, for-profits, education institutions. So Mr. McFarland is a principal, is that the right title? I do not know, is a principal of La Martiniere College. It's a leadership job. It's an academic job, but it is also a managerial job. He manages that school. So management is applied across all sectors. Even if you want to join the IAS, you will find a good management education will help you in your job. Because at the end of the day, when you're managing a district or you're managing some aspect of a ministry in the central government or in the state government, you are a manager. Right? You're managing the context of the government, but the managerial concepts stay the same. And the principles stay the same. Therefore, and living proof is that, look, we used to be encouraged at IIMA to please consider joining the government. And 6 people actually did, and they're doing very well. And if you count the IIM graduates in the IAS, it's a very sizable number.
That's quite a figure for all those who were wondering this or that. So I think the answer is you could even do both. And since you've answered this career decision-making question, we'll push our luck a little further. And there's one more question. So we have now an integrated program offered by a few IIMs, the newer ones actually, starting with Indore, for students who have just finished their class 12. So they can apply directly, and this is your 5-year program, which gives them a dual degree. So there are questions on, should they opt for the traditional 2-year program and postgraduate diploma in business administration, or do you see this program, doing well? And is it okay if students skip graduation and go directly into this integrated program?
So the conventional answer would be, it's good to get a firm grounding in one subject in your undergrad and then do a master's in management. However, 2 things. One is that, look, you don't really know if you're going to be able to get in after 3 years. And 2 is, it depends what your options are. Right? Now, if you've got into a great college and a great course and, somewhere else, and then you've also got this integrated program, that is when you have a decision problem. But if your choices are this versus a not so great course in a not so great college, I would say the answer is clear. You have to go here. So it depends on your choices. I think IIM Indore is well reputed. I think IIM Indore is climbing up the ranks steadily. I do not know what the latest survey shows will be. What is the rank of IIM Indore? Is it 5 or 6? What is it? 7?
Yeah.
Okay,
so
I don't know.
We have ABC now almost on par, and then the second this thing is
Lucknow, Kozhikode, and Indore.
Yeah.
So it's in the top 6 IIMs.
Yeah.
Placements are good. Profs are good. I have been there twice. To give a lecture. I think the last director was a former prof from IIM Ahmedabad. Okay, so it's a good place. You will enjoy yourself. Indore is a good city. I think the weather is good. I think the campus is very beautiful. I think if I look at IIM campuses, I think Kozhikode is beautiful. I think Indore is beautiful. I think IIM Ahmedabad is remarkable. I think Calcutta is good. It's got a lot of greenery. I think Bangalore is a beautiful city.
Yeah.
But IIM Indore is a good place, I'd say. And I would certainly consider it favorably and certainly look at it as one of the really good options for me after school.
So we have a couple of more interesting questions. There is one on, someone wants to know about jeevansathi.com. How did that idea come about? So there is some question on Jeevan Sathi, and also
that is a very simple answer. We had done Naukri, and we said, okay, that is one category of ads, classified ads in in print that we have moved to online. And logical extension was let's do one more classified category, and that was matrimony. And second logical extension was how about a third one, which is real estate, and we did 99 acres. And then we said one more big category in print advertising is education ads for education institutions, and we did shiksha.com.
Yeah.
Essentially, what we did is looked at print and moved it online. Rule of thumb.
Okay, so I'm sorry, this person is anonymous. So I'm sorry it wasn't that Mr. Bikhchandani had a marriage problem or wanted to get married. I think that's the answer that he was expecting or she was expecting. So there is one more question on Delhi University versus IIMs. Delhi University is much cheaper. So this person wants to know, should we save up on the fee for IIMs, because Delhi University fee is hardly anything compared with the IIMs, and then use it in our entrepreneurship?
I would not see. I'll tell you, if you get an IIM admission, right, there are bank loans available, right, which you can repay in 2-3 years of working, because the kind of jobs you get after the IIMs, right, they will pay you well enough for you to repay that loan. Right, so even if your financial circumstances and family aren't such that you can afford to pay those fees from family savings or your parents' salaries, you can take a loan, and that should be all right. Okay, so I would not compromise on quality of education and take a shortcut on this one. Right, develop all your options and then make a rational choice, and rational choice may well be to take that bank loan and then repay it in 2-3 years after working, after an IIM graduation. See, education is an investment in yourself.
Yeah.
And you almost never will get to make it when you're 35 or 40. Therefore, make the right investment.
Thank you. Thank you so much for those answers. Sir, over to you, Mr. McFarland.
Well, it's just time for closing remarks and to formally say words of thanks to Mr. Bikhchandani. Why I wish to say thank you is because in the kind of job which I am in, many young people come and ask me similar questions. I am extremely grateful to anybody who will give them honest answers. Your answers related to passion, what you called a burning desire. Your answers related to the practicality of a safety net. Your answers related to what it means, okay, how you are going to be affected socially, not being able to pay your share for a restaurant bill, for example. These are realities that our young people must know. It sounds very glamorous. It seems very wonderful. We will then talk about the gods, and we will talk about fate, and we will talk about virtue, and so on. But at the end of the day, you have to keep yourself safe. But how can you ignore the burning fire that is within you? Thank you so much, Mr. Bikhchandani. And thank you, Dr. Modi Sahai, for inviting us and allowing us the opportunity to be with young people. I know they at the moment are faceless. 300, 400 of them are faceless, but I do wish them all the very best. And I hope that the decisions that they make will also be supported by their parents and by the safety nets that we in society can give them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. McFarland. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sahai. Thank you so much for inviting me. It was a pleasure.